Where's Matt? Got 1 minute. Where did Ian go? Is he gonna? Oh, I just want to make sure they're gonna do a countdown for us. The kids?
Workshop session of November 25th, 2024 will now come to order. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on the Methuen Public Schools website. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Member Desaglio.
Here.
Member Keegan.
Present. Here.
Member Maxwell.
Here.
Member Willett.
Yep.
Mayor Bowler.
Here. All members are present. We need a motion and a second to accept the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Member Desaglio, second from Vice Chair Keegan. Any discussion? There's no discussion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and tonight's agenda has been accepted. We'll now move on to the flag salute.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has anyone signed up for public participation? Thank you. We'll begin with Kim Marin from the Tenney School.
Thank you. Kim Morin, I work at the Tenney Grammar School. I want to express a concern that I have regarding the use of humor at the last school committee member. Some examples being that you would like more than anything to get the kids back to school so you can stay home and get your work done, or challenging us to a Coke and a Pepsi challenge. While humor can be a valuable tool for building rapport and alleviating tension, I think it's important to remember that if it's used at the wrong time, it can be perceived as patronizing and unprofessional. I ask that you consider our professional needs, contract negotiations, and our livelihoods to be a serious situation. This is not a time for humor, public challenges, public humiliation, or glib comments. There are expectations of us as professionals in our classrooms, and I feel that the same expectations should exist here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Judy Flagg from the Tenney as well.
Oh, there you go. Now you can got it. Okay, this is way easier in front of 7th graders, just saying. So my name is Judy Flagg. I live at 151 Woodburn Drive in Methuen. I'm an active voter in this town. I've lived here for 27 years. You might know me a little bit from around town. I've been at the middle school for 22 years. I raised my children in Methuen. They all went through Tenney Grammar School. I am 100% invested in this district, in this school. I love my job. I love my students. I love my coworkers. All of that said, I also need to address some of the comments that were made at the last meeting. One in particular that struck me really hard like a gut punch. Teachers get raises every year. No, we don't. Not every teacher gets a raise every year. I'm one of the lucky few. I'm at the top of the pay scale. I worked really, really hard to get here. 22 years of service, a master's degree, an additional 75 credits of graduate work, paid for mostly out of my own pocket. I worked really hard to get there. What did I get in return? In the last 12 years, we've gotten 0 raises twice. We've gotten 1% raises multiple times, gotten 2% raises multiple times. If you add that up, over 12 years, we got 18% in raises. 18%. What did I do? By comparison, and this is the number that really matters, the inflation rate over that same time period was almost 35%, double our raises. So any 3% or whatever we get this year is not even close to making a dent in how far behind we are on the pay scale. Okay? I'm glad to be at the top of the pay scale. It's a good place to be. But by the time your medical insurance goes up and you pay for school supplies out of pocket and a million other things, we're practically losing money every year. Is there another one?
Thank you.
Okay. And so it's not just me. It's anybody who's not at a step 1 through 10. If you are a step 11, which is half of our teachers, we are not getting raises every year. Most years, 1%. Thank you. Appreciate it. Another thing that's a little bit disheartening is to always hear, well, there's no money left for teachers. By the time you do everything else you need to do, there's no money left for teachers. Maybe next year. But then you look at how many contract employees you have and how much money is being paid to those contract employees. And yet, so you have money for contract employees, but you can't raise those salaries for the teachers that are already here, that are already invested, that are already caring for and loving these students. That hurts. That hurts a lot. And I know we get new buildings, we get roofs, we get pickleball courts. I know all of these things are very, very important, but so are your teachers, especially your veteran teachers. So I will say again, I am 100% invested in my community, in my school, in my job, in my students. And I would really love to feel that you are invested in me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Weaver from the Tenny.
It's green. Okay. Dear school committee members, I was moved to speak before you today after watching and listening to the school committee meeting on November 12th. To say I'm dismayed and disheartened is an understatement, so I'm going to speak directly to the comments of the meeting that were mentioned. It was said in the meeting that facility issues were intentionally not reported. I have a real problem with this language, and it is an insinuation of mistrust of teachers. That we would ever intentionally not notify the appropriate people and continue to live in an unhealthy and unsafe environment for ourselves and students, and to have a gotcha moment is ludicrous. Like Member Shabilia said, we're doing more than is humanly possible in an 8-hour day. You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to give you some insight into the many ticket systems that we have to open up and navigate daily. We not only have facility tickets, we have human services tickets, technology tickets, student cell phone use tickets, student Chromebook damage tickets, Tier 1 behavior tickets, Tier 2 behavior tickets, parent communication tickets, and school supply and classroom needs tickets. We are inundated with tickets. Now is not the time to minimize the work we have to take on. Do not explain away unsafe and healthy schools because the teachers didn't fill out another ticket. Member Shabilia, you also made a comment in the last meeting that we cannot compete with Andover. Well, we are competing with Andover. Our students compete with them in the classroom and on the sports field. They compete against them for jobs, test scores, scholarships, and college admissions. And of course, we are losing teachers to Andover and other surrounding districts. This comment sounds like you have given up. It is not time to give up. It is time to make sure our students and their teachers have the support of the city. Support that is crucial to make sure they can compete. Just like our students need teachers surrounding them who say they will fight for you, teachers need a school committee that says you are worth it and we will fight for you. We need a fair and equitable contract. Fight for us. The teachers and students of Methuen cannot have a committee that will sit here and say we cannot compete. We need a committee that says we must compete. We must invest in our schools. We must work to negotiate a contract that shows the value that the city of Methuen places on their students and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Govin?
Green. Perfect, we're green. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Govin. I am a resident of Methuen, 32 Pheasant Hill Lane. I am also a school counselor at the Marsh Grammar School, and I myself have 3 children in Methuen Public Schools, 2 at the Marsh and 1 at the Little Rangers program at the high school. I, like many of my colleagues here, want to address the comments that were made at the last school committee meeting. The laughs and the jokes, they're really not funny. As another colleague said, this isn't the time to make jokes. It's really disheartening to think about our paraprofessionals who are fighting for a contract, who are doing the same jobs, who have to show up and work side by side with individuals who are not nearly as trained, not nearly as competent, and are making more than 50% what they're making. Every day, I have a PA ask me why they should stay. Why? Why should they? Why shouldn't they go work for the contracting agency? Why shouldn't they go to Andover? And I'm running out of things to tell them. After the negotiation session last week, and after the school committee meeting after that, there's not a lot that I can say. I will say that I think we all need to remember that we're here for the students of Methuen. I am here for the students of Methuen. I have been on the PTO, I volunteer for everything, I coach youth sports. I am invested in this community, and I expect the same from every single person sitting around this square. We are all here for the students of Methuen, whether you're at the square, whether you're behind me. We are all here for one goal: to provide students the education that they need, the education that they deserve, and the education that they're entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Jones?
Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Heather Jones. Although I've been a teacher at the Comprehensive Grammar School for more than 25 rewarding years, full of successes and tears, my career started as a classroom aide and then a teacher in the Air Public Schools prior to the closing of Fort Devens. Before starting my own family, I treated my job in Methuen as if it were a calling, showing up in the darkness of the early morning hours and staying well past sunset to create the best experiences for my students. Even now, my own children attend just as many events in this city as they do in our own community. And so tonight, I come before you as a dedicated teacher, an honorary member of the Methuen community, and a proud member of the Methuen Education Association to address statements made at your last meeting, along with thoughts about the current collective bargaining process. Like you, the committee, I have one voice and one vote. And tonight, I am using that voice to call for fairness, respect, and living wages for our paraprofessionals in Unit C and the teachers of Unit A, all dedicated individuals who play a crucial role in our schools and make a difference every day. As a Unit A teacher, I have immense respect for our Unit C paraprofessionals whose work is indispensable to the success of our schools. They change diapers to ensure that students are dry and comfortable all day long. They literally spoon feed students who can't feed themselves. They know our students in ways teachers don't even get a chance to see. They're with students at recess, supporting their social growth. They are with them during specials, supporting them in an area where a classroom teacher doesn't get to see them excel and flourish or possibly flounder. Our PAs are the communication devices, for lack of a better term, for these students. They literally sit on the floor with students who are melting down, soothing and calming them, all the while one amazing teacher with a loving wink and glance can continue to tend to her 15 or 20 students. Paraprofessionals often start the day with many kiddos greeting them off the bus with a smile. They are the first and last smile our special education population sees many days. Oh, and they're there to teach too. They witness and nurture moments that define a child's growth, whether it's their first word, their first step, or the realization that they can achieve something they thought impossible. Despite this invaluable work, they are asked to do it for wages that make it hard to stay. That's not fair to them, nor is it fair to the students who rely on their consistency and care. You've spoken about how paraprofessionals have been offered raises, but the truth is, these offers have been manipulative and insufficient. The latest contract proposal dangled retroactive pay just before the holidays as if it were a gift, rather than the basic fairness they deserve. At the risk of repeating myself, paraprofessionals feed, toilet, and teach children. They are there when students take their first steps, say their first words, they learn to write, and yet they are grossly underpaid for the invaluable work they do. Every one of us wants what is best for our students. To achieve that, we need to retain staff who is committed and able to meet a student's needs with consistency year after year. It's not about leaps and bounds. It's about incremental fairness that allows us to focus on our work and our students rather than worrying about making ends meet. We are not here to pillage or disrupt the city of Methuen. We are here to work with you to ensure that Methuen's children receive the best education possible in schools that are safe, well-maintained, and staffed by professionals who are treated with dignity and respect. I appreciate the words spoken about your respect for teachers and the work we do. However, your actions tell a different story. For years, we've seen our schools underfunded, our facilities neglected, and our staff undervalued. Respect is more than words, it's actions. It's equitable funding, safe working conditions, and fair compensation for everyone in our schools. As you appear to have far more control of this narrative than we do, misleading statements from this committee have made it harder for us to convey the truth to the public. For example, Mr. Shabilia, if you choose to talk about numbers, you must have them in front of you. Without accurate information, you consistently mislead the public, as when you overstated the cost of a 1% raise for teachers and mischaracterized our wage proposals. That kind of misinformation damages trust and undermines the bargaining process. Ms. Donovan, you suggested that our responsibilities are as simple as snapping fingers or clicking buttons, calling it easy peasy. As Carrie Weaver aptly stated, I assure you our work is far from simple. My colleagues and I are not just teachers. We are mentors, counselors, crisis managers, and more. It is our job to shape lives and futures, not to perform maintenance tasks or fill out reports about leaky ceilings or moldy tiles. It is incredible to think that the roof at the CGS has been replaced and yet still leaks every time it rains. The city should really ask for their money back. This is the responsibility of the facilities department, not classroom teachers. Let me be clear, I am a teacher. My job is to educate and support students, not to perform the duties of building maintenance. If an issue like the ones that have been brought to your attention are visible to the naked eye, it should fall on the maintenance crew and not the teachers. Yet I work in facilities where basic upkeep has been ignored, with problems that should never reach the classroom. For years, we've seen millions of dollars advocated for repairs, and yet the roof still leaks, tiles stay moldy, and safety issues persist, while the superintendent has to continue to make cuts. Teachers are constantly taking up the slack, vacuuming our own classrooms, washing windows, cleaning desks. Many of us keep screwdrivers and Allen wrenches for minor fixes in our desks that should be packed with paper and pencils and Chromebook chargers. Mr. Willett, I want you to know, sir, that I am an honest person, proud to be part of a profession that is rooted in integrity, trust, and a deep commitment to ethical standards. Secondly, it is concerning that you misunderstand the bargaining process to such an extent that you expect teachers to sit down with you and compromise directly. That is not how negotiations work. Additionally, your sarcastic remarks and dismissive tone do nothing to foster a collaborative atmosphere. Mr. DiZoglio, you have stated that teachers receive automatic yearly raises, but this is not true for everyone. Once we reach the top step, there are no built-in raises. Our wages remain stagnant unless otherwise negotiated. These inaccuracies show a lack of understanding of the very system you oversee. Let me make this clear. No one here, no teacher, no paraprofessional, no member of the Methuen Education Association is looking to pillage the city. We're not asking for extravagant wages and raises or for the district to compete with the Andovers of the world. We're asking for fairness, to be compensated in a manner that aligns with similar districts in the area and region for the work we do and the care we provide to Methuen's children. We heard dismissive, incendiary, and insidious comments from this committee. Dishonest, collusion, bomb, and easy peasy, suggesting that our responsibilities are reduced to the click on a keyboard. This could not be further from the truth. Our work is complex, exhausting, and deeply rewarding because we care so much for our students. As teachers, our work often extends far beyond the hours we spend in the classroom. We love our students, and we show it by putting in the extra time to make sure they feel valued and supported. We want to see that love and care reflected in the decisions made by this committee. You accuse teachers of dramatizing the issues, but we're only highlighting the facts. The conditions in our schools are unacceptable, and the lack of respect for educators is clear. We aren't asking for much. We're asking to be treated like professionals, paid fairly, and provided with safe, well-maintained buildings in which to teach. This isn't about gotcha moments or social media sound bites. It's about the thousands of children who depend on us every day. It's about the future of Methuen and ensuring that we can attract and retain the best educators and paraprofessionals. Your actions speak louder than your words. You and the City Council are the governing body who make policies and decisions about us like we're just a line item in your budget. I challenge you to shadow a teacher or paraprofessional for a few consecutive days. I won't hold my breath on that one. Nonetheless, as you continue to discuss the pressing need to address funding our schools, I urge you to explore the use of the free cash as a viable yet temporary solution to support teacher contracts, paraprofessional wages, and other critical school budget items. Free cash is an opportunity to invest in our schools, ensuring that our teachers, paraprofessionals, and students have the resources they need to succeed while you continue to examine other more permanent strategies. Let us use every tool at our disposal to prioritize education and create a sustainable future for Methuen's children. Additional funding is needed, and the school committee should advocate for an increase in the municipal budget allocation for education. It is time your actions align with your words. Respect us, fund us, and show this community that its children truly are your top priority. Stop dismissing the concerns of the teachers and paraprofessionals. Stop pointing fingers at others and start working with us to create the schools that Methuen students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Bartlett?
Thank you. It's quite a night for my first public participation. I'm Christina Bartlett, a parent of 2 students at the CGS, and I live in Methuen. Another little one that will be part of CGS in a few years. I do have to just say thank you to all the teachers that have poured into my children so far and continue to do so. It is very powerful to walk in and see all the red, so I just do need to say that. I am here tonight also to bring some clarity on some of the chatter from last school committee meeting. I am the head administrator of the newly established Methuen Mental Health Parent Advisory Council. Unfortunately, last week I couldn't be here and I did not provide a printout with the intention and definition and purpose of our group when it got brought up. So I feel like there was a lot of things that were misconstrued, and that's why I wanted to come to kind of bring clarity on a very positive group that we have established. So basically, I think we can all admit that there is a true mental health pandemic facing our children, and it's happening younger and younger. And when it comes to the parents, although we have all these other great groups, many of which I'm a part of, I've been the president of CPAC. I was involved in that for many years. I'm on the school's school council. I go to the PTO meetings. Any opportunity I have, just like everyone here, I'm trying to do the best I can for my children. So I get involved whenever I can be. The thing that is missing is a parent outlet where parents can openly come together and talk about the mental health issue facing our children right now. We don't just want to have one-on-one side meetings or come to public participation necessarily and voice the concern. We want to be part of the solution. And so we want the ability to come together as parents on the parent level and collaborate and really be part of that discussion and solution. And that's kind of where this group naturally started to form. I did notify John Crocker, Brandy, and Gina the minute the group did form, because I didn't want to, as it was discussed last meeting, do anything behind the scenes. This was a very positive thing. We have over 50 members right now, and everyone's very excited about it, ranging from lower school, middle school, and upper school. There's a good mix of parents in the group. Some have neurotypical children, some have neurodivergent children. There's stay-at-home moms, there's people in mental health, there's teachers. It's all parents, and we all come from different backgrounds, but the one thing we have in common is we want our kids to have a better mental health experience going forward. In today's day and age, it's just becoming harder. So the purpose of this group is for us to be able to come together, discuss the issues. I did have a positive meeting with Gina, John Crocker, and Brandy last week, where we are hoping to work together with the parent group and the school. We're still working out the logistics of who that point person will be at the school level. One of the things we talked about is, depending on the issues that come up in the group, there may be times that's Gina Bozak, there may be times that's John Crocker, there may be times we come to the school committee, and there may be times everyone says, our hands are tied, this is a state issue, and that's when we as a group would start writing letters to the state. So we are working on trying to have that point person within the school, and that's still being discussed, but we are very excited. I hope after tonight more parents hear about this and join. Right now, bullying tends to be the big topic that's coming from a lot of parents, with a lot of concerns on what we can do to improve that and what we're hearing from our children as parents. Our first meeting will be in December. All the details are still being tuned out. But if you're listening, you can find us on Facebook at Methuen Mental Health Parent Advisory Council. If you're not on Facebook, we are creating an email as well, so I will try to somehow get that out. But I just wanted to bring that clarity. I hope you all get excited about it. It's a great need today, and it just really creates that casual atmosphere for parents to be able to openly discuss among each other, be part of both the concern and the solution, and then I'm hoping to bring that to the appropriate point person so we can all kind of have the same end goal of helping our kids. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak who didn't sign up previously?
Hi, my name is Nicole Pereira, and I am a parent of 3 boys currently attending the Marsh Grammar School. I am speaking today because I was extremely disheartened by the recent school committee meeting. The discussion felt overwhelmingly dominated by finger-pointing about who was to blame for the ticket issues, who submitted them, who didn't receive them, and who should have received them. Yet amidst all the discussion, no one truly addressed the root causes of these significant problems. It's essential we address some significant concerns that have emerged at the Marsh School. First, we need to clarify on why rugs were removed from some of the 4th grade classrooms. Additionally, we must investigate the troubling growth of mushrooms through the bathroom floor, identify the source of mold in lockers and tiles, and determine the cause of the bubble on the gym floor that was discussed. I feel like once we can pinpoint the root causes, we can take meaningful steps to resolve these issues effectively. We must redirect our focus to these pressing concerns as they directly impact our children's health and learning environment. For example, if we are worried about the condition of the rugs enough to have them removed, we should also be equally concerned about having them all tested. The results of these tests would enable us to discuss and address any potential mold issues appropriately. Also, it would be beneficial to consider scheduling professional carpet cleaning once or twice a year, perhaps during summer and holiday break. This practice would significantly enhance the carpet's cleanliness and overall appearance. While daily maintenance is essential, taking this additional step is valuable for their upkeep. I would like to commend Dr. Kwong and Mr. Goslin for their initiative in conducting a walkthrough to address the concerns that were highlighted in the MEA photos. However, moving forward, I think we also must involve custodial management and a mold expert in future inspections. Their expertise is crucial in accurately diagnosing and prioritizing issues. If we need substantial changes to address the evident moisture problems at the marsh, we need to start these conversations immediately. We all understand that significant projects take time, but slapping on temporary fixes will not resolve the underlying problems. By addressing these matters proactively, we can secure a more sustainable future for our school. And lastly, I would like to discuss what is causing a lack of parent engagement in our schools from the perspective of a parent who wants to engage. The trickle-down effect from administration is significant. They are not only managing their own responsibilities, but also taking on the duties of positions that have been eliminated or cannot be filled. As a result, I feel like they are burnt out. This, combined with a poor contract situation, creates an atmosphere where teachers and support staff feel unsupported, unappreciated, and again, burnt out. When our school staff is in this state, it becomes challenging to encourage them to participate in activities like science fairs, talent shows, art shows that aim to increase family engagement in school-run events. However, with the proper support, I believe we can restore our school community. I hope that we can work together to create an uplifting environment that inspires teachers and engages families in these enriching opportunities. In the end, it all comes down to funding. We must create a budget that adequately staffs our schools, ensures a safe and healthy learning environment, and provides opportunities for engaging activities for our students and their families. I believe we all desire the best for our Methuen community and hope these words reach open minds and lead to a meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, we haven't received anything in writing, so at this time, I will close public participation. If in the future you cannot make the meeting in person for public participation, you can send an email to Martha Sorois at masirois@methuen.k12.ma.us before 3 p.m. on the day of the school committee meeting. I think what we'll do is we'll pause briefly just to let the room clear, and then we'll move on to the presentation. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll request a motion for a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from member Donovan, second from member Willett. All those in favor of a 5-minute recess, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll take a 5-minute recess and return at that time. Thank you. The Methuen School Committee is now reconvening after a 5-minute recess. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of the school committee roles and responsibilities.
Good evening, committee members. First of all, let me say it's a pleasure to be here. This is a presentation that I was originally scheduled to present back in September, but it got pushed off given the passing of Mayor Perry. That happened right around that same time. I believe all of you have in front of you a packet of information that I'll go over tonight. I have done this presentation to various iterations of school committee members in the past. I want to say it seems like it's maybe been at least 4 or 5 years, so some of this might be a refresher for some of you. This is really meant to be sort of a high overview of 4 major areas that affect school committee members. So we'll kind of just touch on some of the highlights, the big picture items tonight. If there's any particular questions that you have on any areas, I'm happy to try to answer them for you. So if you turn to what the agenda is, the 4 areas that I indicated are the role of the school committee. We'll spend a little bit of time just going over what that is. It's really set, a lot of it, by statute. We will do a quick review of the open meeting law, as well as a quick review of the conflict of interest law, and a review of public records law, and hit on those items that are there. Also, in addition to this as resource, there are some great resources that you can find online for school committee members. There's one in particular. It's a advisory on school governance, which a lot of this information came from directly. It was actually released by DESE shortly after 1993, after school reform, and has really been and maintains to be the foremost authority on school governance. So if you've got any questions about that, I actually kind of keep it in my bag and bring it with me. It's always a great way to just go and take a look at something if you're trying to find something out quickly. Also, all of these things, the open meeting law, conflict of interest law, there's very good advisories that pertains particularly to school committee members. So if you've got any questions, obviously feel free to ever reach out to me on any of these, or contact Brandy or the chair and see if you could get in touch with me on that. Finally, I will say MASC is a great resource to you, and they also do trainings. I think a lot of you may have had when you became the school committee members. They probably did trainings and came up with those, also great resources. So there's a lot of good information about all of this stuff if you want to learn a little bit more besides what's in the packet that you have now. So with that, let's take a look at the role of the school committee. So there are really 4 major areas here where school committees are tasked with governance and responsibilities. They're broken down into setting education goals and policy, budget, staffing, and selection and purchase of textbooks. We won't really spend too much time on that one. That's all the years I've been giving this one. I've had very few comments or questions about that one right here. So let's focus on the big things right here, setting education goals and policy. So the school committee establishes education goals and policies for the schools in the district, consistent with the requirements of law and statewide goals and standards established by the Board of Education. If you've got the sheet in front of you, and it looks like I think all of you are looking at it, you're going to see legal sites that are there, just in case you don't know, if it's the first time you're ever seeing that. MGL stands for Mass General Law. That's Chapter 71. Most of this is found right in Chapter 71, and then that's the section where you can find the citation to this information. In terms of the superintendent is employed by the school committee and manages the system in a fashion consistent with state law and policy determinations of the school committee. Then under the superintendent, the principals are the education administrators and managers of their schools, and they supervise the day-to-day operation of their school and the school property. If you look at some of the DESE highlights, according to them, they look at the school committee as the publicly elected appointed board of directors of corporations. So you're considered sort of the board. The superintendent is the equivalent of the CEO and provides the administrative leadership for the school. So you didn't realize that you were CEO, did you, Brandy? And then
the line, before establishing policy, school committee should solicit information and recommendations from the superintendent. That's one of the big things right here. If you're going to set policy, you've got a CEO, you should reach out to him or her, whoever is the leadership, and try to talk about that. The line between education policy and administrative operations is sometimes difficult to navigate, so they give some examples below. School choice law, that is the school committee responsibility. Setting the length of the school day and school year, that's a school committee responsibility. Adopting general disciplinary policies for students, that's school committee policy in consultation with the superintendent. Setting rules of student conduct specific to each school, that's delegated to the superintendent, the principal, and the school councils. Broad system-wide curriculum or school restructuring, that's the school committee responsibility after seeking advice and recommendation of the superintendent. Detailed curriculum decisions, those fall to the superintendent and principal responsibility. Standards for high school graduation and for promotion of students from grade to grade, that's a school committee responsibility. And establishing report cards and other progress reports, that's superintendent/principal responsibility. So those are some of the big examples that you commonly have questions about. Now, in addition to policy, the other big item that school committee members are tasked with is the budget. And I think you've all, if you've served on the school committee, you've all sat through budget season, you know that that is yours. You own that. So the school committee reviews and approves the budgets for public education in its district. The school committee must hold a public hearing on the proposed annual budget, and the school committee has authority to determine expenditures within the total appropriation voted by the city or the town. All right, so the budget is the big one. Now, staffing, that's the third item here. Now, when it comes to staffing, there are certain statutory directives that are given to school committees. The biggest one is the school committee is responsible for hiring the position of the superintendent. School committee hires the superintendent, enters into contract with the superintendent. Assistant associate superintendents, that's based on the recommendation of the superintendent, but it is ultimately the school committee authority. The school committee has the authority to hire a school business administrator, an administrator of special education. School physicians and registered nurses also falls within the school committee's authority. Supervisors, attendants, and legal counsel. Now, administrators, principals, staff not assigned to a particular school, athletic coaches, those are appointed by the superintendent. Teachers and other staff, they're hired by the principal, subject to the approval of the superintendent. Levels of compensation. Now, this is one, the school committee establishes level of compensation for school principals and other administrators and personnel not assigned to particular schools. When it comes to hiring practices and policies, school committees may establish additional qualifications for hire beyond the required certifications, and then school committees also may establish personnel policies so long as they're consistent with law and don't infringe on the superintendent and principal's management and responsibility with hiring. Now, collective bargaining, obviously something that's very timely. The school committee serves as the employer for collective bargaining. So they are the employer of all the teachers, nurses, all the different groups. The school committee serves as counsel there. Professional development. The school district has to adopt a professional development plan for all principals, teachers, and other professional staff, and the plan must be updated annually and set forth a budget for professional development. Now, when it comes to discipline and discharge, the school committee has limited roles when it comes to employees. Obviously, the school committee can discipline and terminate the superintendent. The superintendent has the authority to discipline or dismiss any employee of the school district, and only a superintendent can dismiss a principal. Principal may dismiss or demote any teacher or other person assigned full-time. Now, I'm going to pause right here because most of what I've said is all just based on statute. It's all things that you've probably been taught right there. So let's talk about some real-life examples of how these interplays actually come into play. So as elected officials and people that probably live in the community, you often talk to your constituents. If there is a concern that is raised to you about a particular employee that is not any of the ones that you have the authority over, the superintendent, business manager, all of those, what do you think your role is? Ryan?
I am to report it to the superintendent.
That's an excellent answer. That's exactly what your role is, yeah. So all of the guidance on this, it becomes very hard, is to try to, try to maintain communication the best as you can and follow policy, which is if you ever get a complaint about someone, you want to refer that to the administration. That's the proper way to handle that. You have no role, you don't play any role in disciplining, things like that. Those all have to be dealt with through the administration. Looking at some of the MASC model information right here, I've got a little bullet up here which I thought was great, which says, recognize and support the administrative chain of command and refuse to act on complaints as an individual outside the administration. Now that can be really, really hard as a elected member. You might want to say to your constituents, let me take that under advisement. The best thing that you can do is let them know that you're going to pass on their complaints. Let them know, or direct them. Another way to do is, why don't you direct that to the appropriate school administrator. Ultimately on those, you want to be able to give whoever the chief administrator is, whether it's the superintendent or the building principal, you want to allow them to exercise their authority. Otherwise, what can happen is it can cause problems. If it truly is an issue, like let's say there was some sort of disciplinary issue that needed to be addressed, almost all those employees that you'd be dealing with are unionized employees. They also have their own rights under statute, and the district would want to make sure they are looking and handling any sort of complaint in the proper fashion. And there can be pitfalls and hurdles that you could inadvertently walk into if the lines of communication and policies aren't followed. As I said, I'm not going to go into you can read the stuff about textbooks and education materials. Any questions at all about roles of responsibilities? I mean, it's trying to be high level here and just hit on some of this. This is a good reminder every now and then. Any questions about any of this right now? All right, good. All right, let's turn to the open meeting law. Now, again, I will sort of kind of high level this right here. We could probably spend an hour, 2 hours just on open meeting law, going through all of its nuances, and I'm sure that you guys don't want me to spend an hour and 2 hours going through just the open meeting law on that, and I know you're all aware of it. Has everyone done the open meeting law training that they're supposed to do online? Have you done that? Good. Okay, it's a good reminder. Make sure you've done that right there. All right, so just some big things. General rule is, except as provided in Section 21, all meetings of the public body are open to the public. The purpose, informing those affected by the process, public participation, which you just sat through, I know you understand that, to be open and to facilitate public scrutiny. It's a checks and balance on accountability, and it enhances public confidence in the public body. So when you talk about the open meeting law, you often hear the term a public body. You are a public body. What is a public body? It's a multi-member board, commission, committee, or subcommittee within the executive legislative branch or within any county, district, city, region, or town, however created, elected, appointed, or otherwise constituted. Big thing to know is subcommittees are also governed by the open meeting law. Lots of communities don't realize if they appoint a subcommittee, you also have to follow that. That means if you've got to post meetings of your subcommittees, you're supposed to keep minutes, you're supposed to call them to order, really got to follow the same sort of rules and regulations when it comes to that. All right, so you've hit a public body. You need to know that for the open meeting law. The question is now, what is a meeting? So a meeting is a deliberation by a public body with respect to any matter within the body's jurisdiction. So for a school committee, that can be pretty broad. We just kind of talked over what our school committee, what your roles and responsibilities are. There are a lot of things that can fall in there. So what is a deliberation? A deliberation is an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body or any public business within its jurisdictions. All right, if you take nothing more from my brief discussion about the open meeting law, it is this right here. Communicating amongst yourselves over text, over the telephone, can be considered a deliberation. So you need to be very, very careful about what they call serial deliberations. All right? If you inadvertently have a quorum of people over text, that can be considered that can be considered a violation of the open meeting if you're not doing that. So really be very, very careful about that. That's the one. Do you have a question?
It's including reply all on an email.
100%, Ryan. So if you get an email, reply all, that is absolutely can be a deliberation. It can get in school committees and other public bodies have gotten things in trouble. Oftentimes, if, for instance, you have legal counsel on someone or your superintendent or someone, if they're communicating with you, myself, Superintendent Kwong are not subject to the open meeting law, okay? But if we send something to you, we'll often give you the directive, please do not reply all to this, because now you can take an email that is lawful and there's nothing wrong with that, and you can now turn that into an unwarranted deliberation that hasn't been posted, okay? So be very careful about that. So, you've got the electronic mail, the email, and you've got the text. Also be very, very careful, this kind of crosses over into the public records. I'm going to sort of do a crossover right now. But a public record is also any form of communication, anything that there's a document. So that can be a text, that can be an email. You want to be very careful. We all have our phones. We all probably have them and communicate really easy. You got to be very, very careful about that right there, okay? You've seen the bullet I kind of just hit there about members of a public body cannot participate in a series of communications with less than a quorum when added together may result in a quorum. So, that's called serial deliberation. They found that people have tried to get around that by let me call 2 school committee members, handle this, and then let me do that and call the others. Like all of those put together can all be found to be a deliberation. So you got to be very careful on that. Did you have a question?
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, you gotta be careful about what's called serial deliberations.
Yeah.
Okay, so, member DeZoglio communicates with member Shabilia, okay? It's not a quorum, right? They're not a quorum right there, okay? Now, member Shabilia communicates with the mayor on the same topic, okay? Mayor then communicates with member Keegan, okay? Now you can see, oh, wait a minute, does this look like they're all discussing the same topic? Yeah, that can be a problem. Okay, so you gotta be very careful of that. Now, not every meeting is considered a meeting. If you're on page 8 right now, there are some exceptions to the definition of a meeting. An on-site inspection of a project or a program as long as the members do not deliberate. So for instance, let's say that you had a brand-new school that was opening and you wanted to go take a look at that and the members wanted to be there. You could all go there as long as you're not doing any deliberations. You could all be there to do a site walkthrough. That wouldn't be a problem right there. Attendance by a quorum of a public body at a public or private gathering. You've got a Methuen High School football game, this big Thanksgiving game coming up against the town of Dracut this week. If you were all there, that would be an exception to the public, to the open meeting law, as long as you're not deliberating while you're there. And then attendance at lawful meetings of other public bodies can get you out of there. When it comes to an open meeting, there are certain components. You need to have notice, attendance by the public, recording minutes, and participation by the public. Now, as long as I've read, we have not had, have we had any open meeting law complaints, knock on wood? Not that I'm aware of. So the committee as a whole has done a very good job about posting your agendas. You've got to put the notice in a place with 48 hours. It's got to be there. Except in an emergency situation, any notice required should be provided at least 48 hours. 48 hours excludes Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Notice needs to be printed in a legible, easily understandable format, and needs to contain the date, time, place of the meeting, and a listing of the topics that the chair reasonably anticipates will be discussed. That's key. So if the posting has gone up and something has occurred that was not reasonably anticipated with 48 hours, all right, there is a way that you could potentially add that to a meeting. You could always amend your posting if possible. However, the AG will tell you if it's not an emergency situation, perhaps your best course of action is to wait until the next meeting, okay? Yeah.
If we could just back up.
Yeah.
If we could just back up. What is a lawful meeting? Like a city council meeting or?
Oh, what was the question?
the reference to a lawful meeting, attendance by a quorum of a public body at a lawful meeting of another public body.
Yeah, that would be like another open meeting of
Okay.
another, yeah.
So to bring up an example, there's a little get-together next week hosted by Member Shabilia and one of our state reps. So what would happen if a few people went?
That is an event, right? As long as
Right.
you're not deliberating
Say- okay.
there, I think that you would be okay,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
But the committee should not be deliberate. If you think there's gonna be any deliberation whatsoever, post it as a meeting.
Okay, well, that's out of our purview. Okay.
Yeah, but
So if I'm correct, the forum is about Methuen Public Schools. So if we showed up and there was a fourth member, any of those topics could be considered deliberation because we talk about Methuen Public Schools, right?
what forum, what are you talking about?
The forum with Dan Shabilia.
Can you explain to me, maybe I need to know more about the,
So Representative Hamilton reached out at this point probably a month ago. He had previously wanted to set up a listening forum.
yeah.
For a slew of reasons, it didn't get any traction. He wanted to bring it back up, asked me if I'd be interested in listening with him. So we are, I think it's December 3rd. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. It's the 3rd. The 3rd will be at the Methuen upstairs in the big auditorium cafeteria thing, and giving people an opportunity to bring forth comments, concerns, questions. And I mean, this is really his event. And I am, I guess, a secondary listener.
So, okay, so first of all, to your question then, this is not the exception. This is not a lawful meeting of another public body.
This is not
Let's
a
be very
public
clear
body.
about that. I thought, when you said another meeting, I thought you were talking about another public body at
But
first. Yeah, so that meeting right there, you and this representative are not a public body, so that wouldn't fall under that exception
Okay.
right there, okay? Attendance by a quorum of a public body at a public or private gathering, which is what I think this would be, including a conference or training program or media, social, or other event, as long as the members do not deliberate. That's the key right there, that the members. I would tell you, if the whole thing is about schools and you think that you're gonna have a quorum there, I would say you're better safe than sorry, and you would post it. Do you think you're gonna have a quorum there?
Not to my knowledge, but it has not been discussed.
Yeah. I think you're covered under the public or private gathering, right there, as long as you're not deliberating. I mean, you can be there if you're talking with this member, but once, whoever's going to watch, you're gonna run a risk if you start getting involved and asking questions about
So
that.
I think that's the intention here. The intention here is, and I don't want to speak for Representative Hamilton, but my understanding of the intention is for him to, it's community outreach. And that's a big part of any state representative's job. He wants to hear what's going on. He wants to understand. I mean,
Like a listening session.
yes, and that's exactly what it is. It's a listening forum.
Okay. So, again, as long as there's no deliberations, that to me is the key here. Because I'm now thinking of, if someone was to ever file an open meeting law complaint, how would you defend it? And would say, yes, maybe there were people there, but there was no deliberations. It fits under this exception right here.
So if all 7 of us were in the room, but 6 of us were just there listening, there's no deliberation. That's
No
not an open meeting
deliberations there.
violation.
That's how you would defend that.
It's good to know.
Now, how the AG would view that? That's the risk that you run there, but I would say, don't deliberate on the topics if you're gonna be there. So. And maybe you even make that statement to cover yourself at the front. This is a listening session, there will be no deliberations here. I mean, for what it's worth, put that on record.
Yeah, and
Can't hurt to do that.
Flyer that his office prepared, I believe calls it a listening session or forum.
Yeah,
So I can make that disclosure up front.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Does that cover that question?
Can I ask you a question about posting?
Yeah.
So, and maybe this is a question more for the mayor than, but, so we've always posted on our own website
Yep.
within within the 48 hours of the meeting. But we always have to post with City Hall to put a piece of paper up on a board
Okay,
with a date stamp.
okay.
Is that a city requirement, or is that an open meeting law requirement?
I think that's a city requirement, because
It
if you
is a
look at,
requirement. That's
if
my
you look
next
at the
question.
posting here, it
Doesn't
says,
say.
notice is gonna be printed in a legible, easily understandable, and understandable format. The date and time when the notice is posted must also be included. Where is notice posted? Local public bodies. In addition to posting notice in the municipal clerk's office.
Okay, so, yep, so we are doing that.
Okay,
That's
the
a requirement.
following are approved alternative methods of notice used by local bodies. Posting on a municipal website, posting notice on cable TV, posting notice in a newspaper. I mean, some of these, you can see how old this law is. We're
Yeah.
talking about posting notices
Newspapers.
in newspapers and cable TVs. But if you are posting this on your website, as long as it's in a place that's easily accessible for the public to see, you'll be fine.
In that bulletin board at City Hall, that's really the home for all of the public agendas, so, in essence, an extension that's posted by the clerk's office.
But is that notice, and I know we've got it, if we post on our website within the right amount of time, and City Hall doesn't get it in time to post within the 48 hours, we're still covered? Like, that's what our question has always been. There's been times when maybe City Hall isn't open, or, I mean, we've had some very unique situations where City Hall wasn't open when we needed it to be date stamped and posted, but we have it all on our website.
Does your rules in your policy say where you're gonna post?
I don't think it says a where. That's why I don't know if it's I mean, I can talk to the acting mayor. I don't know if it's a city ordinance or not. We do it, and we've done it forever. It
So
was more
you
of
do
a-
it in the
was
municipal
is it
clerk's
a-
office, and then in addition to that, on the
Yes.
front of the, in addition, you're talking about some other place?
We post it, date stamp it with the city.
Yep,
And then we always post it online
So you're
with the
covered.
whole packet
Yeah.
on our website prior to going, I mean, then the school committee gets a packet,
Yeah.
copy of it.
so it's placed in places where the public
Public
knows
can
where to
find it.
go and they can find it, yep. Okay. When it comes to open meetings, if there's ever any, it's better to be cautious on some of these things, particularly if you ever have something on a meeting that might be controversial and you're taking a vote on. The AG would always tell you, if there was ever a concern, to not have the meeting, repost it, make sure that you've got your posting covered, and do it again. Because, again, if there was ever an open meeting law violation that is filed, there's a process, and I won't spend too much time going through the process, because we haven't. If you ever have a violation, I'll come and tell you what to do, but ultimately what'll happen is, you'll get the open meeting law complaint, and you'll have an opportunity to see if there was a violation and potentially to try to cure that.
Okay.
Okay? But again, there's been a number of times, I know the superintendent and I have talked, if there's been a meeting, and a lot of this happened during COVID, too. There was a lot of changes to meetings here since then. But I think for the most part, this public body has been very good about postings and agendas and things like that. Okay?
Thank you.
Mike,
know-
if I could?
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yeah.
First, can you just hit on the ongoing concern of social media? Because I know that's been a discussed topic in the past. For example, there's a post, be it on the school page or off the school page, and say, for example, I make a comment, and then I disappear. Member Donovan makes a comment. Member DeZoglio makes a comment. Is that,
Yeah, that's.
if there's no cross-commenting, are those?
No, those are concerns. You've got to be very careful about that. Again, that could be considered deliberation. If it's, if one person puts something on a Facebook page and they say, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden the members start all getting in, and now you've gotten to a situation where you're on a public forum, okay? Again, it's by whatever means. Remember when I said the communication over text, email? Thank you, Dan. This is probably what I should have hit on at that point, which is social media. That also is a medium that you can now find yourself having a unposted deliberation meeting on there through that. So you've got to be very careful about that right
And
there.
to add to that, Member Shabilia, so let's say Member Maxwell were to post on Facebook stating an opinion about a school committee topic. You wouldn't do that, I know. But let's say you did that, and then let's say at least a quorum of this committee even clicked like on that post, that could be construed as potentially deliberation. So that's why it's especially important to be cognizant of what we do on social media, not to pick on you, Member Maxwell, just stating for the purpose of illustration.
But to bring it a step further, if the post is non-school related, there's no longer an issue.
If it's about, post about puppies, I don't think so.
Right.
If it was about puppies, that's not school-related right here, okay, unless it was about therapy dogs, okay? But it has to be about a matter that is in front of within their purview. I'm looking at a slide. MASC has a really good slide on the open meeting law and electronic messaging, and there's a couple of bullets. And I'll just read this to you because I think it's the perfect time to say, with a few exceptions, any use of electronic messaging by public body members to communicate with a quorum of the public body members during or outside of a meeting may constitute private deliberation, which is prohibited by the open meeting law. So that hits exactly the question that you were asked right there. Electronic messaging during a meeting by less than a quorum of the public body's members, while not directly prohibited by the meeting law, is discouraged if those electronic communications are not shared at the meeting. Let me stop that right there, okay? I would be cautious, again, we all have phones, right? During your meeting, because I've seen this, again, this is where open meeting law and public records kind of overplay. Someone during a meeting picks up, and it might be as simple as texting, I'll use myself, I'm texting my wife to let her know we're running a little bit late, and that's it. Well, the members or people that are at home or in the audience, they don't know what you're talking about. How do they not know that you're not texting one of the members of that? So I've had public records requests for members' texts that they sent during public meetings. So I would be very cautious about your use of your electronic technology during that, because it could be subject to a public records request. It might be that it was harmless, that you're, hey, I'm running late, or, again, I'll use myself, I'm going to get Chick-fil-A on the way home. If you've known me for a while, you know that's a common thing for me, right? But not everybody in the public knows that, so I don't want to have to, so, yeah, so it's a good idea. I mean, you can look at your phones, but the actively texting, you want to be careful about that during the meeting.
So the second question relates to minutes. For executive session minutes,
Yeah.
acknowledging that they are not public until the executive function
To the
is-
purpose, they are, so you have to keep minutes for all of your meetings. There should be someone designated to be recording your minutes. Okay, all right. Secretary Dan. And you should be constantly drafting those minutes and then bringing them for approval and review by the committee on a regular basis, okay? Are we up to date? Well, I don't want to ask that question. Actually, I'm not going to ask that question.
So I guess my question is, is the level of detail in the executive session minutes necessarily the same as the level of detail in a regular session minute?
So I would say it's not whether it's in open session or executive session, keep in mind, it's not a transcript, okay? Start with that premise right there.
Right.
No one expects you or anybody who's recording to make a word-for-word summary of what was said. It is supposed to be enough so that a member of the public who wasn't there could pick up, could get those minutes and have a reasonable understanding of what was discussed and any important votes or actions that were taken. Okay, so it could be as simple as an executive session strategy was discussed regarding contract negotiations. The parties discussed next moves or an update was given. Okay, if there's votes about what to take, those certainly should be recorded, as well as who made the motion. What was the vote, what was taken there. Now, whether or not an executive session minutes are ever released is really a separate question. You are allowed to keep executive session minutes private from the view of the public, so long as the purpose and the reason that you went into executive session still exists, okay? And that depends on the particular matter. So for instance, if you had a piece of litigation that was ongoing and you were under the litigation exception right there, while that litigation was going, you're probably not, you could approve those minutes but not release them, and you probably not release them. You're supposed to go back periodically and say, okay, any minutes that we haven't approved for release, are they okay to release at this point? And if it's determined that there's information that's in there that might be of use at some point, then you could say we're not going to release these at some point.
And can I ask a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
Executive session minutes are approved in executive session?
In executive session, yes.
just wanted to say that
If
out
you
loud.
are going to review executive session minutes, one of the lawful reasons for you to go into executive session would be to review executive session minutes, all right? And you would review that, because if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't have an executive session about a topic and then go into open session to talk about what was discussed in executive session, which is to remain private. Executive session is really, it's one of the things, and there's only 10 reasons that you can go into executive session, and they're all laid out. And when you're in executive session, what is shared in executive session is not to be shared outside of this small group, or whatever group is there, or whoever's invited in there, and at any time, unless maybe that purpose no longer exists.
I just have two questions, and they
Sure.
may seem like silly questions, but.
There's no silly questions.
When we have subcommittee meetings, do those have to be open to the public, where like public participation happens? And
It depends on the purpose, okay? So all of the same purposes just go with the general premise that any meeting of a public body is to be conducted publicly unless there is one of the reasons that you can go into executive session,
Okay.
okay?
And my second question was about that listening session. I have a feeling that maybe a few of us will go to that. If we were to discuss, like, I'm also a parent, so if I was to state something that I have a concern about, or I think is a great idea, or does that conflict with my school committee? Like, I try and keep the two roles very
Yeah.
different, parent,
Yeah,
school
it's-
committee member.
It's hard to keep those roles, so I think.
In a
look, if
situation
you-
like
If
that.
you are going to be there.
Yep.
And if you felt the need, first of all, my advice would be, if you're going to go there, is purely to listen,
Okay.
okay? That would be my advice, just so you don't get yourself in any hot water whatsoever. Now, I understand that you also, that maybe you wanted to, again, if you're not deliberating, you say, look, I'm speaking as a parent here, make it very clear. That would be the other saving grace right there. But again, there's no deliberating. You can't decide on anything there as a group, so.
Okay, that's
Okay.
all. I just wanted to
Yeah.
cover my bases. Thank you.
Any other questions? I like doing questions more than just going through, what were slides, so if anyone's got any questions. I will tell you, if you're on page 11 through 13, 11 to the top of 13, are the 10 reasons that you can go into executive session. The big ones I'll hit on is, number one is personnel. If there was ever a personnel matter that was ever before the board, you have to go under Purpose 1. And there are very strict rules about who has rights under Purpose 1. Under that particular, there are safeguards for an individual if they're discussed. That individual has the right to have notice that they're going to be discussed. They have the right to be present during deliberations. They have the right to have counsel there. They have the right to speak on their own behalf. This is something that I feel like usually gets used more in the municipal setting than in the school committee, where most of the personnel matters that usually face a school district usually happen like at the administration level, so not as much very common here. The big ones for school committees that I see are usually Purpose 2 and 3, and those are usually when you usually see me or one of my colleagues here. And Purpose 2 is to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. So, for instance, if you were going to discuss a contract with the superintendent, you could do that in executive session. If we were going to prepare for, to conduct collective bargaining sessions with your union, that would be done in executive session. Also included in that are what are called grievance hearings. So occasionally, through the collective bargaining agreements, they'll have grievances that find their way to the school committee as usually one of the last stops in the forum, and that would be done under Purpose 2, okay? Number 3, which is the other common one that you use, is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. All right, very, very important, and I believe this always happens here, so you guys are in good speed. But the chair's got to declare that. All right, that's one of the ones that the chair's got to declare. Those are the 2 big ones that are usually used. Number 7 is also one that sometimes is frequently used, which is to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law. Number 7 is how you would cite to use reviewing executive session minutes. You could use that right there. Okay. The 13 talks more about meeting minutes. We've kind of covered that already. Dan, if you've got any questions about that, obviously look there or feel free. I can help you with that.
So I do have one question on the executive session minutes, and
Yeah.
it gets into a administrative loop. Is there a time limit or a time window where we have to approve executive session minutes? Or are we going to be forced to say we need to have an executive session next Monday?
Yeah, there's.
Vote on minutes, and then I have to have new minutes from the executive session where we voted on minutes. Now we have to have an executive session in the following week. And
Where is it here?
Gets
The
into
minutes.
a little loop.
Where is the slide here? You're supposed to review them. Let's see if I have it in here.
I mean, we have a generally regular cadence of executive sessions, but I don't know if there's a hard requirement.
And so, which is, here we go. There's rules about, if you go to page 15 right here, if a person requests a copy or inspection of the minutes of an executive session, the public body shall respond within 10 days and shall release any non-exempt minutes. It shall perform the review and, so if you ever get a request for them, there's specific rules about how you handle that right there. But you're supposed to be doing it on a regular basis. I think they talk about within the next 2 meetings or so, of when you're supposed to review them.
All right.
But you've got to keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. One other thing too is what I would recommend is on your minutes, if you have a meeting that has multiple executive sessions, I would recommend that you keep separate minutes. So, meeting that occurred on November 25th, have minutes for executive session 1 and then executive session 2, because I think it's just good practice, because if you ever have executive session 1, the reason for that executive session, might end at some point. And if you ever have a request, you can just release those. Sometimes they'll put them, I've seen it, people put them on the same document, and then you have to redact things if you ever get them released. So I always think it's a good practice to keep them sort of separate.
So, quick question about executive session minutes. When we release them, they should be to the public, like a website or something, so they can go and click on it?
Where do you release, you put them probably on a website right now, right? Is that what you do, or are they all online?
They should be, yeah.
Okay, yeah. As long as you've got them, I mean, really what they are is in case anybody wants to request them, and you need to be able to have them, to access them. All right, the rest of this is, a lot of this is about enforcement. If you ever get an open meeting law complaint, I'll skip over that. I'm just trying to be cognizant of time here, because I know that we have a executive session scheduled after this. The next piece of this is the conflict of interest law. The conflict of interest law, the purpose, public employees have undivided loyalty to their public employer, and they must act in the public interest and not for private gain. All right? This one right here is, are you covered? Let's start with, who wants to answer this one? Are you covered by the conflict of interest law? The answer is yes, you're all covered, okay? You're all municipal employees, all right? And there are particular rules about accepting gifts. Are you supposed to accept gifts as public employees? No, I mean, you can, there's a threshold value, says no public employee or person selected to be such employee may directly or indirectly corruptly ask, demand, exact, solicit, seek, accept, or receive or agree to anything of value for themselves or any other person or entity in exchange for being influenced in the performance of their official act or to act in any way being influenced to commit or aid in committing, colluding in, allowing any fraud, or being induced in any way to admit to any violation of their official duty. There are penalties for you, and that monetary penalties, and/or imprisonment for up to 10 years in jail for those that violate this. So if there's ever a question about whether or not you should be doing something, check with counsel first. Okay, that's the key right here. What else is the big one right here? Really, there's very strict rules about having multiple jobs if you are a municipal position. By the fact that you're all sitting here right now, I think you've probably already cleared that right now. Does anyone have any questions in particular about the ethics law? Have you all taken your training on this right here? Okay. So in the interest of time, I will refer you to this right here on ethics, because we spent some time on that. How about the public records law? That was the final one. Anyone have any questions about that? There's a lot of rules about public records and about requesting them. I feel like Ian and I have dealt with are you the public records access officer? You are the public records, okay. Yeah, so you and I have worked on that right there. The big thing for school committee members, okay, because most of, when it comes to public records, are any document, any medium can be considered something that could be considered a public record. So I want you to be very, very careful when you leave here. Think about what you put in writing, what you use on your cell phone, or do not use, I would say, text message, okay? Text messages can be requested as public record if you're talking about Methuen Public School issues right here. You have Methuen Public School email, is that correct? Use that and that email alone for your work on behalf of the Methuen Public Schools. If you use your private email and you start using it for Methuen Public Schools, guess what? Now that can be the subject of a public records request, okay? And that's how people wind up getting their personal emails disclosed. So you want to be very careful of that. But when it comes to the public records law, most of it, the handling and the response is usually done on the administration side, so I don't need to go through all of that right there. But again, it's just be cautious about what you put in writing. The advice that I always give is ask yourself when you write something, would you want that on the cover of the Boston Globe or the Lawrence Eagle Tribune or on a social media site? Use the grandmother test. Would my grandmother be embarrassed if she read this right here? So be very, very careful about what you put in writing. Think twice. If there's sometimes, and we're all human, and we're all subjected to emotions, all of us, and sometimes you might get something and the response is to fire something back. Write it and then delete it. You know, it's cathartic, you know, so, but at least, always be thinking about what you're putting in writing. So look, I mean, this was 4 things. I just kind of hit on high points and the things that I think are important to school committee members. If there's any questions at all, happy to answer them. Like I said, there's great resources out there for you. And I can always come back and do like a full session. You can do like full sessions on all of these for like an hour. Again, I know that. I think that's what you want tonight on the Monday before Thanksgiving, so.
So we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we've covered it well. Thank you, Attorney Maccaro. But are there any other final questions before we move on? If not, that's what we'll do. Next on the agenda is any other business from the committee. I want to state before we open this up, just speaking as the chair, I do not believe that it is productive or in the best interest of the city in the collective bargaining process for individual members to engage in public discussion regarding the ongoing negotiations in open session unless designated by the committee. So I will entertain the discussion of any other business with the exception of the collective bargaining process. There's no other business. We need a motion and a second to adjourn this workshop session of the Methuen School Committee for November 25th, 2024. And
So
enter
moved.
into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Member DiZoglio, second from Member Donovan. Before we proceed, I'll state the following for the record. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, units A and C. I'll make that declaration now. We will not reconvene into open session at the conclusion of the executive session. So at this time, I will ask for a roll call vote on whether to enter executive session.
Member DeZoglio?
Yes.
Member Donovan?
Yes.
Member Keegan?
Yes.
Member Maxwell?
Yes.
Member Shabilia, yes. Member Willett?
Yes.
Mayor Beauregard?
Yes.
Unanimous.
The time is 7:30 PM. Open session is adjourned, and we will convene now in executive session.
Happy Thanksgiving, Methuen.